Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody. As we mentioned last week, during this season, many groups take off. If you're still meeting, congratulations. You're doing a great job. Good for you. And I don't want to just kind of dig in during these 3 weeks, this is week 2, into some of the prophecies predicting the birth of Jesus. Probably the most common prophecy of all is that the virgin would conceive and bear a son. And I mentioned last week that Matthew and Luke don't tell any of the same stories, but there is one detail they both agree on. That is, Mary was a virgin. So let's dig into that prophecy and see where it comes from. It's actually Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Therefore, he, the Lord himself, will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. The word virgin is interesting. In the Hebrew language, it could mean asexual, but it could also just mean unmarried. Now, back then, they assumed unmarried women would be asexual. But some scholars have looked at that and said, well, it doesn't really predict a virgin birth. And in fact, you look at the very next verse, it's predicting kind of a natural birth. In fact, this verse is actually referring to someone who would be born within the lifetime of Isaiah. How do we know? Verse 15, he shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be deserted. Isaiah is predicting a time when an invading army will overcome Israel. And what is going to be the sign of that time? Well, a baby is going to be born. We actually know his name. Turn the page. Chapter 8, verse 3. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz. For before the boy knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. There it is. Isaiah's been predicting the demise of Israel under Assyria. And people say, no. And he goes, no, you're going to have a sign. The sign is Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz will be born. And before he knows good and evil, this whole nation will be destroyed. So how in the world does that refer to Jesus? You recall last week I mentioned that some prophecies have an initial fulfillment and then they get bigger in Jesus. So for example, King David got bigger in Jesus. Moses, the lawgiver, got bigger in Jesus. The temple of God got bigger in Jesus. This prophecy has a double fulfillment. The first is a fulfillment of destruction. The second is the fulfillment of restoration. When Jesus comes, he will be born of a virgin, not just a maiden who gets married, has sex, and has a baby the normal way. No, the Greek word in the New Testament does in fact mean that she is asexual. And as Matthew describes it in chapter 1, verse 18, now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. He goes on to say, this would fulfill, and then he quotes Isaiah 7:14. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. What's unique is the name Emmanuel. Both in Isaiah and in Matthew, he is called Emmanuel, which simply means God with us. So here is a second kind of fulfillment of prophecy that we see, that not only do we have a thumbprint that someone predicted something that came true, or we have this type and antitype where Jesus fulfills not just words on a page, but whole generations of history. But here's the third type where you have a fulfillment that leads to destruction, that leads to a bad outcome for Israel. And God says, no, we're going to make this right. I'm going to circle back around. And the next time this is fulfilled, it will not be destruction, it will be restoration for my people. And how's he going to do that? This is so important. And this is where Meher Shalal Hashbaz never fully fulfilled that prophecy. There has to be a second prophecy. You know why? Because God wasn't with him, not fully, not finally, like he is with you and me in Jesus. So discuss in your groups how Jesus, the presence of Jesus, makes such a difference in knowing God. And perhaps you could read John 1:14 or John chapter 1, verse 18, and then discuss, if that is true, how we can continue to be the presence of Jesus embodied on this earth through the local church, so that once again, people would come to know not destruction, but restoration.